Beautiful day, huh? I can't think of a better place to be than on the lawn of our beautiful Capitol and planting a tree. That's what we do, and today it's a very special tree. My name's Orville Gigstad. I live in Syracuse, Nebraska. I'm on the board of directors of the Nemaha NRD, and I am proud to serve as the president of the Nebraska Association of Resource Districts. Nebraska has a proud history of planting trees, and putting the 100 millionth tree in the ground reflects Nebraska's willingness to invest in the future. Our tree planting success is owed to the forward thinking of the landowners in Nebraska. Since the inception in 1972 of the Nebraska Natural Resource Districts, we have been planting conservation trees for windbreaks, erosion control, and wildlife habitat. And now, in the modern times, we're planting them as biofilters for livestock confinement units. We're planting them as buffer strips for water quality. We're planting them in downtown cities and urban environments to mitigate climate change. During planting season this spring, the NRD Conservation Tree Program planted their 100 millionth tree in Nebraska. That's about 50 trees for every person in Nebraska. We're ready today to recognize the ceremonious 100 millionth tree, which will reside permanently at the state capitol. Nebraska's NRDs have worked hand in hand with conservation partners to support landowners for 50 years, including tree planting. One of those conservation partners, maybe our biggest partner, is the USDA's Natural Resource Conservation Service, NRCS. So please welcome with me NRCS State Forester, Rich Nelson.
Thank you, Orville. I appreciate that. You always do a great job at getting us started off. And so, very briefly, I'm just going to talk about the long-standing history that the federal agency, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, has with the natural resources districts here in Nebraska. A great federal and local partnership, and for the last 50 years, and then before that, when we were both called something else, Soil and Water Conservation Districts and the Soil Conservation Service. But most of you already know all that history, and so I'm going to take a little bit of liberty here and talk about a couple of things as I related to my own experience with the NRD tree planting program. And so if you will allow me to, I'm just going to go back through a few things that are in my memory. Starting with my dad, who was on the actually what was then the Boone County Soil and Water Conservation Board at one time, who I'm sure took action on certain tree planting projects. And then I fast forward to when I was 10 years old, and we had bundles of trees on the shady side of the house that we hand planted into a windbreak around our farmstead that's still there and still provides protection for my nephew's young calves when they're born every spring. Then I think about my first job at the my first job in this profession. It wasn't actually my first job, but my first job in this profession at the Albion Field Office. And part of my job there, working for the Lower Loop NRD, was to go out and inspect some tree plantings and count how many, what the survival was, and see how tall the ragweed was that maybe needed to be shredded down around some of those. My first permanent job in the conservation field was with Game and Parks out in Alliance, and I worked with 3 conservation or natural resources districts, out there in that part of the state with people like Galen Whitrock and Roy Lyles and Charlie Snook, designing miles of windbreaks kind of in the heyday of the early days of when CRP accommodated windbreaks into that program. And then now, as my duties both as state biologist and doing state forestry duties with the Natural Resources Conservation Service. And so I told you those little snippets of my history, not to think that they're anything special or to try to highlight myself, but I have a story related to the NRD tree program, and so does every one of you. And many of you, because of your profession and your involvement, have a really deep and long and complex story. But so do all those Nebraskans that Orville talked about. They all have some sort of connection to that NRD tree program. Whether it's that 4th grader taking that little seedling home, planting it in the yard with their family and trying to take care of it and hope it grows. You know, somebody at an NRD lake sitting under a tree that the NRD planted and fishing with their family. Maybe they don't even know their connection to the NRD tree program. Maybe they got home safely during some blizzard because there was a couple strategically placed living snow fences along the highway. Or maybe they're not even from Nebraska. Maybe they're an out-of-state hunter shooting a limit of quail out of a plum thicket that the NRD planted on a CRP field. So my point is, everyone has a story related back to our 100 millionth tree and all the trees that have been in between. So as you kind of go through today and in future days, make sure you share your story, and maybe more importantly, ask somebody else what their story is and listen to what they have to say. So with that, I will turn it over to our next speaker.
Thank you, Rick. Those are all good tree stories, and being in Nebraska, the home of Arbor Day, we take a special pride in trees and what they can do. I'm very happy to introduce this next guest. In July 2021, Executive Travel, a Lincoln-based travel management company, announced its ET Green initiative with a goal of planting 1 million trees. Just a few short months after the announcement, Executive Travel had a partnership in place with the Nebraska NRDs to start planting trees in the spring of 2022. Thanks to Executive Travel's partnership, Nebraska NRDs were able to plant nearly 50,000 more trees. This is a pretty cool story of a partnership between NRDs and private business, and it all came about because Steve had an idea to have some carbon offsets with tree planting, and Dean saw this article in a paper. So Dean calls him up, and without any middlemen, they work out this program, and Dean says, we have the perfect avenue to plant those trees. We have NRDs all across the state that are experts in this. And so this program came about like a lot of NRD programs. We were looking for a solution to a problem and came up with an answer. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome Steve Glenn today. Thank you.
Yes, good morning. I'm Steve Glenn with Executive Travel. I'm honored to be here to thank the NRDs for our partnership. To embellish that story, we had announced ET Green, which was our initiative to plant 1 million trees as a company to help offset the carbon that's caused by every little airplane you see up in the sky, and many of those are our customers and that travel throughout the world. And we said we have to do our part environmentally to try to mitigate some of that environmental issues related to that. So with Brian Wallingford, who's in the back there, Brian helped me set this program up. And then after we put the pieces together, out of the blue came a call from Dean. Where are you at, Dean? I'll tell you, he's my savior, because it's one thing to buy the trees, it's another to get them planted, right? And out of the blue, the partnership came, and what a great partnership. We're just starting. We're committed to plant those 1 million trees in a 10-year period. And more importantly, we're also planning to challenge other companies who impact our environment to do the same thing. So we're going to be going to our partner companies, many here in Lincoln, throughout Nebraska, and say, hey, it's our time to step up as a business community and to use the NRD, which is the perfect resource to help this. And not only just the planting, but as you know, in Nebraska, when it gets 92 degrees, you've got to take care of those trees. And we have to make sure that we don't just plant and leave, that we plant, make sure we take care of them. And that's what the NRD does, is with private owners planting those trees and taking care of them, they'll be here in 100 years. And so once again, Executive Travel would like to thank the Nebraska NRD Association and all the great members we've met, and we are encouraged about our future, and we are very thankful.
Thank you. Today we get to plant a sugar maple in accordance with the original Capitol landscape plan established 90 years ago. And we planted a tree right over there, an oak tree, for Arbor Day. And Bob Ripley was out here and showed us the plans that 90 years ago, they mapped out this beautiful Capitol, but they also had the mapping for all the landscaping and where each tree was supposed to go. And so they follow those rules, and so this tree is exactly where somebody 90 years ago said a tree should be. And we're going to, this is going to be our commemorative tree for the 100 millionth NRD. So what a better way to mark that occasion. I would like to have thank everybody for coming out to celebrate. I want to invite the speakers up here to grab a shovel, and we'll throw some dirt on the tree. We'll take some pictures, and then you're all invited for lunch at the NRD office.